What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Blade Dive. I'm excited to be back in the virtual booth this week. Yeah, good week. Today's guests, though, I'm excited to talk about them too. Right now, though, is a good time for me to let you know how you can support the podcast. You can follow us on social media at The Blade Dive is where you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're sharing any photos, tag us. Let us know what you got going on in the Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, all around the world. We love seeing them. You can subscribe to the podcast too. Leave us a review. If you've got 60 seconds, hit us with that review. Let us know what you think. And you can tell a friend. That's how this thing grows. Tell a friend about the podcast for sure. All right, my guest today is Steve Petrie. And Steve is the OG of Canada and Canadian terrain parks. I mean, he was doing it and trying to figure it out just like everybody else was around the world back in the day when parks were taking off. There isn't really anything that Steve hasn't done. He has been a mechanic. He has created his own brand and consulting business with Arena Snow Parks. He has built Olympic half pipes. But what he's also done is figure out how in the hell that all balances out with just life in general. Steve is definitely a pursuer of the POW surfing. He's all about chasing the snow. We revisit some incredible memories like Cutter's Camp and what it was like to be a part of Cutter's Cup. Most recently, Steve has declared the excavator as his favorite toy of choice for moving snow or dirt. And I don't blame him after being a part of things like Holy Bully. I would too. Right now is a really good time for me to thank our sponsor, Prenoth. They support the podcast. You should support them too. Let them know, if nothing else, that you're stoked that they backed the Blade Dive. All right, if you're at home right now, you know the deal. Grab your favorite drink, kick your feet up, and if you're in the machine, anywhere in the world, doesn't matter. Go ahead and turn up the volume.
Give it the juice. Already.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode, another day of the Blade Dive. And with me in the virtual booth today is someone who has made an impact all around the world. Not only in Canada, all around North America, but has been a part of several different Olympic venue builds and is also the owner-operator of Arena Snow Parks, and that is Steve Petrie. Steve, welcome, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, dude. I wouldn't have it any other way. Legend in the game. You've been doing it for quite some time. It's been awesome seeing the things that you have built and produced around the world. So, yeah, thanks for taking the time to be on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm stoked to be here.
Dude, and you have done so much in your career. You're the OG of Canada. I would W that. You have built and been a part of several different Olympic venues, but there's a story. And as much as you're willing to unpack or share with us, I want to get into that, but we'll also have some laughs and some fun along the way, talking shop. But I want to do something that we've been doing on the show previously a couple times, and that's starting the show off with a special guest question. You cool with that?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Fire away.
Good deal. And the question is from nobody other than Crush himself. So I will play it for you now. Here we go.
Hey, Steve. It's your old buddy Crush. Just got my boots off, sitting in the truck in the parking lot at Timberline. Just finished day 4 of Holy Bully. I hope you're well, buddy. I can't wait to see you and work with you again. I'm really stoked you got this Blade Dive. I can't wait to hear what you say. And my question for you, in all your travels around this big blue earth, is what resort or region, how about resort? What resort has the best snowpack that you like to work with? Yeah, I think that's it. Anyway, I hope you're good, brother. Much love. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm so gutted that we're not up at Timberline with those guys right now. And yeah, it's definitely the highlight of our year when we get to work with those guys on that stuff. And but hopefully next year, fingers crossed, things will go back to some normalcy. Yeah, that's a tough one. I've worked all over the world in so many different snowpacks, and everyone has its own unique challenges. I'm from the West Coast, so I kind of like that good old fashioned wet West Coast, like wet, heavy snow, so I would say Whistler, for like a bomber snowpack that lasts year round and it's great for building with, if you get some of that warm, wet West Coast stuff mixed in with some good snowmaking, it's a pretty good snowpack. Definitely been around the world in some super challenging places. Like if you go to Korea or China or places like that, where it's really cold and it's all man-made snow, you end up with these baby powder type stuff. So that's really challenging to work with. You're trying to build stuff up taller and it just keeps getting wider and wider and wider because it spills out, and then grooming it out can be a super challenge. So yeah, I would say I may be biased here because I'm living on the West Coast and I've cut my teeth in the West Coast snow, but I like the Pacific snowpack to work with.
No, I don't think there's a wrong answer to the question. And, again, huge shout out to Crush for contributing. And I know that you guys have worked together in the past and the product and the outcome has just been out of this world, to say the least.
Yeah, it's such a great team, working, with Lucas and I working with all Crush's crew and stuff. It's just such a good experience, and the whole team just gels together, and it's amazing what you can do when you have like a super motivated crew like that, trying to achieve a goal. So yeah, we've been very fortunate to work with those guys for sure.
And we were catching up the other night and you were saying even the excavator is kind of your happy place in the snow instead of the snowcat.
Yeah, it's true. I've spent years and years driving snowcats. I got, thousands of hours. I don't even know how many hours, but in the last few years, my happy place definitely is, I think, in the excavator. That's just sort of kind of what I'm interested in these days. Shaping snow with an excavator. It's I love it. It's a good
cool,
challenge. Man. Yeah, it's fun.
So cool. Well, again, I'm so excited you're on the show because for everybody that's listening that doesn't know Steve is like the OG for Canada. I mean, he is like the dude. I mean, if you have not met Steve, you're getting ready to meet him now through audio so that you can understand further how much he's contributed to the industry, not only in Canada, but around the world. But I think a key component of just kind of peeling back the layers of getting to know you is really just all about where you mentioned cutting your teeth on the West Coast and loving that snowpack, but you didn't start out you weren't born on the West Coast, right? In Canada, you were born from the East Coast or born on the East Coast. I'd be curious to just kind of go maybe a little chronological and just kind of have you paint a picture of your childhood and growing up and what that looked like.
Yeah, I grew up in Eastern Canada in Ottawa. I was always into all kinds of different sports. When I was younger, right up until my teens, I played a lot of hockey. I was playing hockey year round, summer and winter. And that was just kind of the thing you did in Ontario. But at the same time, I was into skateboarding and BMX and, skiing, and then definitely snowboarding once that finally came along. So, Ottawa wasn't too bad of a place to live in. We had kind of everything there. There's hills, not mountains, and there's snow. There's stuff to do. But I just always had a dream of kind of, as soon as I could, move out to the West Coast. And so yeah, basic childhood. Grew up building jumps, out of wood, Evel Knievel style stuff. Hitting stuff with my bike and building the yard. Backyard quarter pipes, half pipes, all that kind of stuff. And I think that sort of, sparked my interest in building sort of features generally, and just kind of took off from there. But after high school, a good buddy of mine, Jaron, who was like the first guy I ever knew, Jaron Dunsmore, who owned a snowboard, he kind of introduced me to snowboarding way back in the 80s. But anyways, as soon as we were finished high school, we jumped in my Toyota Tercel and we headed out west and headed straight for Vancouver. and the rest is kind of history, I guess, from there.
Yeah. So you never really looked back. Like you got in the Tercel and you were just saying, peace. I'm
Yeah,
doing my
yeah,
thing.
pretty much. Yeah, yeah. I was when we left high school. I did I was in Vancouver probably for 2 years, and then ended up kind of drifting back to Ottawa when the money ran out and stuff like that. We were still pretty young guys, so we just spent all our money, and then we'd go home to recoup for like a couple months. So I did go back for a year, and actually during that time, pretty cool. My dad wanted to go on this big ski trip, so him and I jumped into his Ford Explorer, and we headed off from Ottawa and drove all the way across the country through the US and up into Canada, and just trying to hit as many ski resorts as we could in like 30
Damn.
days. And it was pretty sick. Yeah, we managed to hit 25 resorts in
What
30
the-
days. So like we just
Wow.
yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I think that really sparked my interest in like the whole mountain lifestyle, and because we just went everywhere, like every ski resort, and it was so sick. So every day, ski, snowboard, jump in the car, go to the next one, stay in a hotel, get up, ride all the next day, and then just keep doing that all the way across the country.
Wow. Can we let's give a shout out to your
Yeah.
dad right now. Holy shit.
yeah.
Damn. That is
he's pretty cool.
that's awesome. I think that is
Yeah.
and that's just wow. Where were some of the places that you guys went? Where'd you stop? I know you maybe remember some of it.
Yeah, I remember some of it. It was such a long time ago, but like, we went to all through Montana, Wyoming. We're like Big Sky. We went to well, I'm trying to think of all the different resorts.
So if you went, what was the route? So you went down and west. You went Wyoming, Montana. Did you go as low as Colorado or no?
Yeah, we dipped into Colorado, and then from there we headed north back up into Canada, and we hit like Sunshine Village, Lake Louise, like all through Banff, and then drove back
So
to
cool.
east that way. But yeah, sorry, my brain's a little foggy on all that. But we went to a lot of different places. It was pretty sick.
That would be rad.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool, because it, like, you and I caught up again, just referencing that, and just, being the parent that isn't necessarily the individual that's standing up. No disrespect to these individuals, but the parent that's standing up in the stands and just screaming and yelling at their kids, like they're definitely the more the advocate for whatever the kiddo wants to get into,
Yeah.
and being kind of an audience that listens instead of an audience to kind of yell back at the referee.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's rad. Like, huge shout out to you. Was that so? Your dad was going, "Hey, we're gonna do this," like, or you, and that's how it just all transpired.
Yeah. I think he was just
Wow.
like, at a point in his life where he's like, I feel like, just doing something, cool. Let's jump in the car and do this. So it was pretty cool. I think I was 17 or 18 at the time. So yeah, it was a really cool experience. We spent a lot of time together traveling across the country and hitting all these resorts. It was interesting.
So
cool. Yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. But you were more of I know I'm guilty of pegging people as skateboarders, but you were more you're kind of doing a bit of it all, right? You were BMX, skateboarding, bit of hockey.
Yeah, doing everything. I mean, when I was younger, I played, every sport you could imagine, baseball, not always on competitive teams, but we were just always doing something, playing baseball or throwing the football around or playing lacrosse, hockey. We spent a lot of time. We have a cottage, like a family cottage that's been in our family for years. So that was kind of our weekends, going up there and water skiing and wakeboarding and stuff like that. So, me and my friends were just kind of into everything, but I skateboarded for sure, and probably leaned a little bit more onto like freestyle BMX and stuff like that, but definitely did both.
And I have to ask too, because you mentioned building jumps and ramps and hitting them with your bike and using those, but did you build them? And that kind of maybe be the precursor for were machines and equipment part of your life early on? Like, I'm intrigued. Like, was it the shovel thing, or was it like dad rented the Bobcat, or dad rented the, you know what I mean? The skid steer.
No, well, the kind of the early stuff that I built was just like, wood ramps, with sort of borrowed wood from construction sites, like a lot of people do. So just kind of sketchy jumps made out of wood and pallets, and just different wood stuff. And then we had some dirt trails around our house that we'd work on, like with the shovel and stuff. But, I was always, I guess looking back, I was kind of always into that kind of stuff, like figuring it out, how to build a jump and, how to hit it, I'm sure back then they weren't all that great, but it's all part of the learning experience, I guess, doing that kind of stuff and experiencing it live.
Yeah. Taking risks early at a young age and going, yeah, we can pull this off.
Yeah, exactly. And me and my buddies, we even had like a jump that we built that we drove around on a trailer. So every time we rode up to a lake, we could, strap a life jacket onto our BMX bikes and go do some lake jumping. We just towed that around with us for the summer. It was pretty funny.
Holy cow. I feel like that's before its time.
Maybe. Yeah, that was the original airbag probably,
yeah,
I guess.
I feel like that's way before its time. What year was that? What year was that going down?
Well, I was in high school, so, years ago.
Shit.
In the 80s for sure.
I was gonna say, yeah. Okay, hey, we're gonna build a joke. We're gonna put it on a trailer. It's 88. Dude.
Yeah, exactly. I would have been 16 or 17 because I had my driver's license by that time, so we could tow the trailer around. So, anyways, pretty funny.
I think that's way ahead of its time. Everybody listening right now, that's awesome. That's so cool. I didn't have the cognizant thinking to be able to say that, oh, let's make this portable. I also didn't have something that was a vehicle that could tow anything. I think for a minute I was running the mom's minivan, and then for a while there I was running the dad's LeSabre Buick.
Oh,
for
nice.
A minute.
Yeah. Sweet.
So
I had the 4-wheel drive Toyota Tercel back in those days, so it was pretty good for towing.
Yeah. It definitely would have been. Throw that thing in 4-wheel, it'll take it anywhere.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, they were killer.
But talk about maybe the teenage years and just if that led into snowcats or what you were involved with respect to equipment.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I had not really been exposed to snowcats other than just like, it was something you'd see around the resorts every now and again, but never really thought too much about them. But I would say I was always interested in different machinery. Like when I was in high school, I worked for a construction company kind of in their shop as like a shop hand, so be working on excavators, bulldozers, dump trucks. And whenever I had a chance, I'd, jump in it and just kind of goof around in the yard, trying to figure out how it all worked and stuff like that. So I definitely was interested in machinery in my teenage years for sure. But I never really clued into like snowcats and what they could do and what, the whole scene until I moved to Whistler sort of in 1994.
That's a big leap. So it was being around equipment, and I mean the ramp on the trailer is still intriguing me. But going,
I'll build you one.
I don't have a place to park it though.
Oh, geez. Okay.
You're like, oh, Parker, you're missing out, man.
Yeah. Find a place.
Come on, like figure
Get
that
a storage
shit out.
locker or something. Yeah. You'll be fine.
Yeah, figure it out. No, but that's such a big leap. Like you had ideas. They were, coming to fruition with just the brainstorming. And I'm referencing the jump on the trailer again, but like you're going from that and then being around equipment and then jumping right into snowcats. I feel like that's not, I know that we're talking about like the late 80s to early 90s, but it's kind of a short window of time, maybe.
Yeah, it was, I mean, like, when I moved to Whistler, it wasn't for a job. It was to go snowboarding. My goal was just to snowboard like as much as I could. And that's the reason I moved to Whistler. I didn't even really, like I said, think about snowcats that much at that point, if at all. But the good thing was when I first arrived in Whistler, I went up to the vehicle maintenance yard where they're working on the cats. And because I worked as a shop helper for a mechanic back in Ottawa, it kind of opened the door for me to get a job working for Blackcomb at the time. So all of a sudden I'm working in a shop that has snowcats. And that's when I started realizing like, oh, these things are pretty cool, and same sort of thing. I was working on the machines, like doing tons of track work and, spending the whole summer, like cutting bolts off and replacing them on the tracks. But then when the fall and the winter hit, I got a chance to jump in the cats. And if they needed to be moved around the yard or if we had to go out onto the mountain and rescue a broken cat, I'd always volunteer to drive it back to the shop. And then I'd do a couple laps around the shop, see if I could figure out what all the buttons and stuff did, and that and that's when I started to realize like, oh, these things are really cool. Like I'd love to have a job driving this. So that's kind of how it started. And luckily enough, being inside, working for vehicle maintenance, I got to see the groomers every day. So I was talking to them, and then I'd see the grooming manager at the time, Stan Kelly, every day. So I would harass him about hiring me to drive snowcats, and that went on for a few months. And then, and back in those days, it was, almost impossible to get a job driving a cat, because someone would pretty much have to die first before like a position would even become available. But luckily for me, one guy who was supposed to start that year, he broke his leg in early season skiing, so he couldn't take the job. And in the pinch, the grooming manager came to me and gave me a chance, and so I got the job, and I never looked back.
Yeah, I was gonna ask too, like unpacking that a bit. Were you hesitant? Because you were saying your first step was to kind of go and introduce yourself and become familiar with the shop and the surroundings of that area. And
Yeah.
and usually with maybe I can't say usually everybody's approach. Let's say this: everybody's approach is going to be different, but you're taking it from the approach of, hey, let's go see what's going on at the shop. Most people, I'll leave it at that. Most people probably would go like, hey, how do I apply for that job? How do I get there? And I think that's a solid point for whoever is listening right now. The audience out there is a job description, a job application, an inquiry, whatever that may be, doesn't necessarily have to start with a computer nowadays. And that's the difference between, I feel like, now the world now and the world that was previous. Gosh, I remember, and I've referenced it I was catching up with Cooper, and just, I mean, it was literally a face-to-face conversation. And at that point in time, like the digital world was coming to its own, and MySpace was like the conversation that he and I were using digitally instead of email to get a job. But still, the relationship had to be built prior to that, and the construction of what it was for him to trust me and me to trust him. I feel like that's big, like that you're able to speak to that and going, hey, I went here first. And then after that, I was, really kind of looking at running this piece of equipment, and how all that transpired may have been different, but you approached people at the shop first, which I think is just, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just a simple thing like that, just going up and introducing yourself to somebody that can open up a door for you, like, I mean, definitely at the time, like Whistler Blackcomb, they had like a lot of big resorts had their hiring policies and procedures, and you're supposed to go through an initial interview, and then they try to fit you in a job that they think works for you. But, I was just like, whatever. I was living in staff housing at the time, which is just down the road from the vehicle maintenance shop. So I was like, whatever, I'll just go up and say hi, and like literally the next day, like I talked to Mike Dean, who was the shop supervisor at the time, and he's like pretty much hired me on the spot. So I went and did the reverse thing. He hired me, and then I went and did my intro interview and all that with HR, and then started the job like later that week, and it was great. I mean, I learned a lot about the machines, like back then, Blackcomb was running old Prenoth T4S's, and they had a lot of LMCs. And so there was just tons of track work to do. So that was pretty much all I did for the first 3 months of the job. I just, take the tracks off the machine, set it up, and spend the whole day replacing broken grousers, broken bolts, broken tire guides, all that, for 10 hours a day. But I didn't mind it. I thought it was cool. And I got to help the mechanics, with other stuff on the machines. And it was just, it was pretty great. Once winter started though, like that, and that was a day job, right? So I was working 7 a.m. till 5:30 in the evening, and it wasn't, I felt like I was missing out on the snowboarding, because I was working 4 days a week there, and then I only had 3 days off. So definitely, like a big decision to try to get on the grooming department for me was, I can work at night and I can snowboard every day. Like it seems like the perfect match, So that kind of really motivated me more to just keep harassing the grooming manager to give me a job.
Yeah, and again, I think that's totally something to speak to. Like everybody that's listening right now, going the extra mile to be able to say, hey, I'm okay with walking up to whoever I need to speak to, so that I can grab an opportunity, as opposed to now we have, digital world and communication and the relativeness. I mean, fucking hell, we're on a podcast right now. We're talking about, so we're putting it out there, and that's the message. So I'm not trying to say that I'm being a hypocrite right now. I'm literally trying to convey the message of face-to-face confrontation is super important. And whether that's negative or positive, the communication that's happening with an individual, especially for an opportunity, could be the make or break, because people don't look at their phone all the time. And if you've got the opportunity to walk up to somebody because you're around the shop and you're interested in operating a snowcat, or you're interested in being on the snowmaking team, or you're interested in running an excavator, whatever it is, go do that. Go talk to that person.
So, no, you got to show them you're keen, right? And they can sense, like if you want the job, and they might give you a chance because they just see that, wow, this person's really going the extra effort to come up here and meet us face to face. And even little things like, when I drove out from Ontario, I just brought like a little toolbox full of like different tools, and I showed up to my first day at the shop with my own tools, and they were just blown away that I would actually bring my own tools to the shop job. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like, pretty cool. They're like, oh, this guy's got his own gear. That's pretty sweet. So little things, sometimes can go a long way.
Yeah, and that's huge, and it really is. I'm not trying to continue to highlight that for everybody that's listening, but it's a big deal. And I think what's cool about jumping into the just next question, but I think what's cool about being able to approach people and be transparent and talk and express your opinion, maybe the opportunity that you want to jump into. There's a lot to unpack with you and just your involvement with the beginning of terrain parks in Canada. That's why you and I are talking right now. We can't talk about Canada and terrain parks without talking to Steve Petrie first. I mean, that's just where I'm at. And so, what has that journey been like? I know you mentioned something about Whistler and going there and being a part of that, but I want to know, if just as much as you're willing to give, what did that journey look like from the beginning to where it is now?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, so I got a job grooming on Blackcomb at that time in 1995. Whistler and Blackcomb were two separate mountains, kind of competing against each other. So 1995 was the first year that Blackcomb had like made a push to have like an official terrain park. Like back in the day, they've had like hand shoveled pipes and stuff like that, but this was the first year that they were committing to have like a park, like an area. It was snowboard only at that time, but it was the park. And there was also the same year they bought a pipe dragon, one of the old pipe dragon trailer mount, the trailers that you tow with the arm on it. It was the 7th one ever made. They sent it up to Whistler to be at Blackcomb. So I started grooming. Of course, I was the rookie, so I went right onto the midnight shift to learn how to run the machine and stuff like that. But I would say like I probably only spent really a couple months on the midnight shift because of the pipe dragon. None of the older groomers, like none of them were snowboarders, and none of them really had an interest in running the thing. And so the manager asked me, he's like, hey, do you want to run this pipe dragon? You can move to the afternoon shift and cut the pipe for us. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Because at that time, like the pipe was kind of the scene. Everybody, in the 90s was hiking the pipe on Blackcomb. Like every day you'd see the same people up there hiking the pipe. So for me, it was a wicked opportunity, to move on to the afternoon shift, which is an easier shift on the body. And then B, cut the pipe that I'm riding every day anyways and try to make it better. So that's kind of how I got my foot into the door. And then after cutting pipe, I'd go into the park and build, try to build jumps and stuff. Back in those days, I had no clue what I was doing. I was A, still learning how to run machinery, and B, there's no manual, no training, or no one to model yourself after, or Instagram or anything like that. So you can't even see what other resorts or other builders are doing. So you're just kind of in there on your own, figuring it out. But it was awesome. Like the pipe dragon it was crazy the way Blackcomb had it set up, because it was a trailer mount. So they had a driver, which was me, and then they had the passenger seat reversed, looking out the back window. So we had another person in there riding along with a control box, like controlling the arm of the Dragon, while I drove up and down the walls. So it was pretty cool. It was like a 2-person job every night. So every night I was cutting pipe and hanging out with like a couple of my good bros that were the original park rangers up on Blackcomb, Craig Sexsmith and Shane Finley. I still keep in touch with those guys to this day, but they've been out of the game for a while. And also with Stu Osborne, who was kind of like the first terrain park supervisor up there on Blackcomb. So yeah, it was cool times. Like every night we'd just go in and build stuff. And a lot of times, you'd build something in a park and it'd be the first time something like that had ever been built in a park, like it was just, like I said, we didn't really know what other resorts were doing other than seeing pictures and magazines and stuff like that. But we're just kind of in there, trial and error, trying to figure it out the hard way, how to build stuff. So it was a cool progression, like it was a great time. And at that time, Blackcomb was really keen on, pushing the limits. Their attitude was just like, whatever you want to do, and let's do it. They were just so motivated to kind of be the best at everything. So, you could come up with crazy ideas and they would just be like, okay, run with it. Let's do it. So it was quite a good time to be starting in there. I was quite hyped on it.
Yeah, and you took the question straight out of my brain. I had to ask, or I was going to, just when you're literally trying to figure out what works, and it's the beginning of kind of an era or concept. Yeah. It's literally a massive component of trial and error.
Yeah.
And so, for everybody that's out there listening, feedback is huge. And so I'd be interested to know kind of how you took that. Was that, hey, we built this, and then everybody comes in and it's like, dude, that's sketch. Like, we're not even going to hit that. Or was it more of a, you know what, hey, what if let's shut the park down, let's bring, the cat's already here, and let's just kind of rework it and see how it flies? Or were things kind of successful from the original conception and construction?
Oh yeah, everything I've ever built just works perfectly first try, Yeah. No, but
send it.
Yeah, just send it. It's fine. I'm sure it's fine.
Send it.
It's but back then it was like, everything was kind of like new. So the riders didn't really have anything else to compare it to, right? So there was no real feedback negatively. People were just hyped that there was new stuff happening in the park. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, people would just hit whatever was there, and, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and we definitely would change it, based on what we were seeing. And I was riding park a lot back then too. So I could get some pretty instant feedback on how things were going. For me, the real progression was just, after we got to a certain point, like figuring out the best way to maintain the park after it's built, like the styles of jumps, like for example, like a tabletop, I used to build more like a true table style. And every night I'd walk over the takeoff, groom the landing, and go back and have to completely rebuild the takeoff. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, this is crazy, man. Like the takeoff, I wreck it every night because I drive over it. I wonder what I could do to avoid doing that. So then I started building a drive around on one side, and that was awesome. I didn't have to drive over the takeoff. It could stay reasonably together. I could groom the landing, go backblade it, drop the tiller, and drive away. But then after a few weeks, the whole jump would get sort of tilted to the one side where you're driving around every time. And then it kind of got me thinking, well, fuck, I wonder if I drove around both sides, if that's even better, So I do the double drive around, take off, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, there it is. That works perfectly, So it's just stuff like that. It was just us trying to figure out, what the cats could do and what we could build with them. There was no park machines back in those days. So we were pushing those old Prenos to their limits, sometimes past their limits, but it was cool. Blackcomb was into it. They wanted us to push hard and see what we could do in there. So it was pretty rad.
Yeah, I appreciated the micro adjustment on the blade stick with the Terrain Master and being able to push the green buttons top of the stick and go left, right, click, click, click. I know I'm not shitting you. Like I definitely did. The
Yeah.
tiller wouldn't fall off as fast. It was so nice. Like
Yeah.
I graciously appreciated that. Like that was huge.
Oh, yeah.
But the conceptual thinking process of being able to say, hey, this doesn't exist. And this is really just every idea, it's not necessarily terrain parks, but when you have a embryonic idea and you're trying to make it happen, you're not necessarily taking it to paper, you're taking it to snow, or you're taking it to dirt, and you're burning diesel fuel, and you're moving a machine around that has parts, and you're making it work. So not only the investment is the time of the individual, but it's the contribution of the resort. So I just kind of want to have people realize, like, yes, all of these different components have happened all around the world, and this is definitely the first time that we're having this conversation on the podcast, but just tying everything together from equal parties, both parties realizing that this is something that's worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's so cool.
And it's and like I said, at the time, Blackcomb was super into it, and they were willing to let us try to push what we could do in there. But it was still a battle, you know what I mean? Like, I used to go into work, in those early days, and if a cat broke down on the regular, one of the regular grooming crews, cats broke down, it was always the terrain park cat that they would take. So I would just, go home. The park wasn't worthy of grooming, they just wanted to groom more flat runs. So that was like the beginning of my battles. I'd have to go and talk to the manager and tell him, how important it is to groom the park every night. And I can't have my cat taken away from me, and then, that it's just like, you got to keep pushing and pushing and pushing for everything, and then it was like, okay, now they're making these cats that are designed to go in the terrain park. I think we should start buying those, and you push and push and push. And I think we need to get, more people in the park helping. We need 2 groomers a night or 3 drivers a night, and then it's like, I think we should have our own sort of leadership thing. We should have supervisors and, lead hands that are only in the terrain park, and they don't groom anything else, and it was just stuff like that. Like the whole way through, I was just kind of always pushing for more and more and more and more, and it's a team effort. You got snowmaking, you got the mechanics, you got the day crew, the shapers, all that stuff. Like you got to have it all kind of firing on all pistons, to make it work. And it was cool back then, like I said, we were doing stuff that hadn't been done at Blackcomb anywhere, probably nowhere in Canada, maybe down in the US a little bit. But, there was nights where we'd just go crazy and build a whole bunch of stuff. And all of a sudden people would show up the next day and there's just like this, massive terrain park that wasn't there the next day. And it's all new stuff that had never been built before, and people were just like blown away by it. So it's cool.
Yeah. I think to quote a friend of both of ours, Eric Rosenwald has definitely been quoted as saying, if you put a massive takeoff on a massive pile of snow, that was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, in a way, like the park builders, we're victims of our own success. There's so many good parks and so many good builders nowadays that like the riders have ridden so much parks, and then now they have an opinion, and if something's not perfect, you're going to hear about it, or like, so it's getting harder and harder to like, keep people satisfied with because the quality keeps going up and up and up. But it's a good problem to have, I guess. But it's the riders are going to let you know about it if it's not built properly.
Oh no, they definitely will. And feedback is good, but
it is.
It's totally good. We'll take it all day long. I do have another guest question for you, and it is along the lines of the next question that we will get into, but I'm going to play it for you now, and I think you're going to like it. So here we go.
Hey Steve, how are you, mate? Apologies we didn't get to shake hands and part ways the way I would have liked to have from Threadbow, but thanks a million for your contribution to Bowley Down Under. It came out $1 million, and I'm pretty sure everybody agrees with that. Just wanting to ask you, with the success you've had with starting and maintaining arena snow parks, that's obviously been a hell of a lot of work along the way, and projects away and big stints of lots of hours, etc., etc. So how have you had trouble having balance and maintaining your personal life and still, feeling like a human and having good relationships? How have you balanced that?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, it's so good to hear from Ruben. I have to get back out to Threadbow and shake his hand next Bowley down under. I'd love to get back in that Volvo excavator and do some shaping with those guys again. That was super sick. So stoked how that turned out. Yeah, finding work-life balance. It's work when you're running a business. You're kind of always on the job. There's the work. Your 9 to 5 work, but there's always things that need to be done that are sort of hanging over your head. That you're thinking about all the time. And I struggled with it a little bit because in the early days of arena snow parks, I was trying to do it all. I was in the cat for 10 or 12 hours a day, then coming home and trying to, do quotes or do proposals or, file my taxes for the business or whatever. There's always a million things you have to do. So I realized early on that you can't do everything. You can't be good at everything. So you have to get some help, especially when it comes to running your business. Focus on the things that you're good at, and get help where you need it. So, as the company grows too, I spend less and less time in the snowcat. I think as I've got older, I love running snowcats. I love shaping with excavators, but I don't need to do it all winter every day. That used to be my winter. I'd be gone for 6-8 weeks. I have a family. I'm married. It's not easy. You miss a lot of stuff with your kids when you're gone for that long, especially in the early days when they're young. Like 6 or 8 weeks can be a long time. So the travel can be exciting, but at the same time, it's hard to be away from the family. So, what I've tried to do is build the business into something that it's not just one thing. We're not just a terrain park building company. We're not just an event company. We sell rails, we sell rakes. So we're trying to diversify what we do. And instead of having me travel around the world and be the guy that's the brand, like I never wanted to be the brand, I wanted the company to be a brand, so I don't have to show up everywhere and be the guy doing the work. So yeah, I think, stepping away from the cats a little bit and surrounding myself with some great people, my right-hand man, Lucas Willette, I couldn't, that guy's just like down for the cause. And, there's so many things he does with me for me to help run this company. And so we divide the tasks, and it allows me to step back and focus more on running business. So instead of just being a cat guy now, I'm going after sales. I'm putting together contracts. I'm making sure the crew has what they need to do the job. So it's still hard sometimes to find the work-life balance, but you have to respect that, because you can't miss out on some of that stuff. Like it's one thing to have a career, but you also want to enjoy life. So, one thing someone told me years ago is you got to schedule your work time, but you also got to schedule your play time or your downtime, because if you don't, you'll just miss out on it. So for me, it's important, like I love hanging with my family. I love recreating, so I need to make time for myself to ride my bike, hang with my family, get on the snowmobile, do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's shout out to Ruben, man. Like that's a deep question, and it's a hard question to answer, because the balance component is you start out in this industry and you become an individual that's working for either a company or your company or a company you started, and it's all about the passion, all about the pursuit. And we've talked about that before on the podcast. And what people struggle to realize a lot of times is that the sacrifice of a lot of those things, what you're passionate about, there's sacrifice. There's no such thing as a free lunch, to just quote an economics teacher in high school from a book that I probably read. You're going to give up something. And to pursue something that you want to do, you've got to be able to realize what you can make a reality and what you can't. And the balance along the way is kind of up to you of what you want to be able to pursue and be involved in. And it really ties into my next question, Steve. And it's heavy topic. I mean, it's, arena snow parks, its conception, the idea, even if you want to date it back to the embryonic concept, but the brand and how it became to be, I would love for you to get into that.
Sure. Yeah. Um, well, I worked for Whistler Blackcomb for 11 years, grooming in the park. I was the terrain park supervisor, grooming supervisor. And, no, things are good. At Blackcomb, I was working, summers and winter in the parks, like, on Blackcomb on the Horseman Glacier. We have summer camps every summer. So I was basically in a snowcat from like the beginning of November till the end of July for like 11 years. And, I just got to a point where I was like, I love the job, but I also felt like I needed a little bit more in my life, like just being in the cat day after day after day, pushing snow, building parks. I just could see in my future it wasn't going to be enough for me, So at that point, I wasn't totally thinking about starting a company, but I approached sort of the senior managers at Whistler Blackcomb, and I kind of pitched them on an idea to combine, at the time, like the park groomers were in the grooming department and the day shift park rangers were in the events department. So I came up with like this proposal to merge, the day crew and the night crew into one department, the terrain park department, with me as the manager. And, in the end, they weren't that keen on it. So, I gave it a bit of thought, and I was like, you know what, maybe I could start my own company. I've learned a lot in the last 11 years, and maybe I could, contract out to other resorts or events and, just offer up the experience that I have and see how that goes. So, in 2005, I decided to leave Whistler Blackcomb and take it on the road, see what happens. Having said that, to Whistler Blackcomb's credit, they were my first customer when I started the company. They hired me back that same year to build the half pipe for the 2005 FIS World Championship. So, we left on good terms, and we've had a good relationship all the way through. They're just down the road from where our shop is, so we deal with those guys quite often. But yeah, that's sort of how it started. I think just me personally needing to grow a little bit more, and have a little bit, something more in my future than just driving a snowcat every night, which there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, it was just something I didn't see myself doing, for my whole career. So, but at first, I learned, we've been in business for 16 years now, and it's definitely had its ups and downs for sure. In the early days, it was just me by myself, just trying to contract myself out for as many days as I could in a winter and trying to make a living, and then sort of taking the summers off, But like I was saying, after Ruben's question there, like it's just, after a while, you're just like, wow, there's only so many days in the winter and there's only so much work I can do. It doesn't feel like this is a business. It feels like it's just me working myself into the ground, So that's when we started expanding a little bit. I started, thinking a little bit broader, like make sure that Arena Snowparks is the brand and it's not the Steve Petrie brand, so I don't have to show up at every contract and be the guy in the cat, because there's plenty of good drivers out there. So that's kind of how we kind of led us to kind of where we're heading these days, bigger crew, sort of, more depth to what we're trying to achieve.
And I have to ask too, just there's kind of two pieces to that. One, how do you recruit people like Lucas? And then two, we've kind of caught up before and talked about, the ability for a resort to understand that a poorly managed, poorly invested in terrain park that's unsafe is not only not good for that resort, but it's also not good for the industry too.
No, exactly.
How does all that how does all that unfold in kind of the business mindset?
Well, I mean, like Lucas, he just showed up one day, out of nowhere, and just came in and then saved the day. But Actually, he was
going back to that point of like show up and show your face. Like,
yeah,
yes, it's amazing that we're producing this
yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
but like go talk to people.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny because it is kind of like that, you know, like especially with us, it's funny, you know, the whole time I've had this career or this business, just people have come in and out of our life that just seem to fit so perfectly, you know, and Lucas was just one of them. He was a park ranger for Whistler Blackcomb. And the first year that ASP got the contract to build the Camp of Champions, same thing. He approached me. He's like, "Hey, yeah, I want to dig up on the glacier, you know." I'm like, "Sure, why not? Put him on the crew." So he was just, you know, handshaping for the summer. Then after, you know, he started getting into the cats a little bit more and more. And even as a park ranger, I believe he got some opportunity to drive the snowcats there. And then all of a sudden, like, he's just this like killer snowcat operator and like building with us at the Camp of Champions. And it just sort of took off from there, you know, like he's kind of a rare breed. Like he's just that guy that's down for the cause, you know, like whatever needs to be done, he's just doing it because it's the thing to do, you know, like that's his motivation, like just do it right, you know. So, you know, there's not too many people in the world, I think, like him. And I'm glad he's part of the team here for sure. And we've had so many other people that are sort of like that, you know, that just, you know, people that work in our shops, you know, just walk in the door and show a picture. Hey, look, I built, you know, this is a mini ramp that I built, you know, and it just happens at the time when we need to hire someone. So it just like clicked. And all of a sudden we have like this great guy working the shop for us, Rob Becerrans, you know, and he just walked through the door one day and ended up working with us for like 5 years in the shop. So I don't know. I think stuff like that, it's just, I don't know, these weird synergies, it just sort of happens, you know? And I think you just have to be savvy enough to be aware of when something like something like that's happened, you know, and make sure you take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'll probably get lots of messages from everybody saying I went and knocked on this person's door and I didn't get the gig.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the other point that I really want to convey. It's not necessarily that you're going to get the job, but you're establishing the relationship, and that's what we're talking about too. Like you're showing your face and you're committing to the conversation, and you're establishing an awesome relationship that may lead to whatever opportunity. I will say this. The Camp of Champions videos that were airing just all over the internet in like the early 2000s. There was some like video to an M83 soundtrack that I'm sitting there just drooling over, you know, with a sunset shoot between, you know, what was being built at Blackcomb and what was being built at Camp of Champions and everything that was going on at Mount Hood. Like just during the summer, man, the froth was real.
Yeah, it was sick.
So
yeah, there was some good times. I mean, we built some pretty cool stuff during our stint there at Camp of Champions, and it was just such a good scene and great times for sure. We had a good crew, you know, good dig crew, good operators. It was just pretty awesome times.
No, I'm sure it was an incredible vibe for sure.
Yeah.
But you didn't mind sharing info. Like that's a thing. Like you weren't really kind of hesitant with going, yeah, man, hey, you know, come on board and be a part of this company. And I'm not going to really teach you. You got to figure it out on your own. You were on board with that.
Yeah. No, we've never been, you know, we're not against sharing information, you know, like I think our philosophy on that is like, if everyone has a good park, it's great for the industry. You know, if somebody has a bad park and you have an incident there, you know, one bad, you know, incident could kind of ruin it for everyone, you know? So, you know, one thing people can't get is our years of experience. You know, we've been doing this for so long, but we don't mind sharing our information and trying to make, you know, the more we share, the better everyone can do. And people share with us and we learn stuff along the way too. So I kind of like that concept, just the open sharing of information, you know, and that's one thing, you know, we really like about, you know, doing stuff like the Cutters Camp up at Timberline, you know. Like Olivia Rowan invited us to come down there years ago. And right from the get-go, we were just like, wow, this is really cool. You know, it's just like a, you know, a lodge full of like-minded people that just are passionate about building parks. And, you know, it's evolved over the years. And I think it's a really relevant part of our industry. And a lot of people pass through there and learn a lot and share a lot of information. And I think it's really important for our whole industry to have, stuff like that people can come and learn from and educate other people on. So, it's never bad to be sharing ideas. I think, at this point in my life, in my career, the pursuit of success, is building a business, growing the company, trying to keep moving forward, and all the things that go along with that, like just the big picture of trying to make your company somewhat successful, like that's kind of what my focus is these days. I mean, I've definitely put my time in the machines, like I said before, I've spent so many hours in these cats, and I think I've achieved a reasonable level. Like I would consider myself like definitely a good park builder, and I've spent a lot of hours doing it. You know what I mean? And it's great. I think people should try to master the jobs that they do. I'm not the biggest self promoter. That's probably been maybe a little bit of a downside of my career. I don't like to toot my own horn or like, make a lot of claims, and it's just probably a reflection of my personality, so I'm more interested in the team's success and the company's success instead of just being portrayed as the person who's successful, you know what I mean? And, nowadays with Instagram and all the social media, it's instant gratification, like someone can jump in a cat, build a jump, take a photo of it, and check it out. Look what I've built, which is awesome. But I mean, I think a lot of times people forget that it's not just a one person in a cat that made that happen. That's the end product. But, you have the managers that, gave you the job, that helped you get the zone for the park, the snowmaking, the dirt work, all the stuff that goes along with it. You know what I mean? It's never just one person that, creates a successful path. So I don't know. I think it's good for people to keep that in mind, like you're like kind of the tip of the iceberg, and underneath you is all these people that played a role in helping you get to that, perfect jump that you posted on Instagram or whatever. So yeah, I mean, that's sort of my take on it, I guess.
Yeah. And blazing a trail and being the first person to kind of go through the wall and knock down maybe any trends that were in place just to kind of push things towards progression is always going to be difficult. It's always going to be difficult. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Yeah. Well, there's no example before us of what we're supposed to do, right?
Exactly.
And even for me, like just running a business, like I have no formal business training, like I've done with everything in my life. I just kind of did it and tried to figure it out along the way, and made a shit ton of mistakes and probably did stuff the hard way before I learned how to do it the right way. But, I guess that's one form of education in a way as well. So,
Well, I'm going to reference just a previous episode, like Peter Colombo. Pete, shout out to Pete. But like Pete was definitely discussed how there's this, dark, weird, ominous cloud over failure. Like it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And, failure he described as his best friend, and that it will always be his teacher. And I think that's something to be said with anything that you're pursuing in life. Like you can't be afraid of moving forward. And whether that's, I think there's a common theme that's developing here, because what's cool is that we've talked about showing face and being present and obviously confronting people and stepping forward and saying, hey, I'd like to have a shot at this. But that kind of applies with the mastery component, because if success is a limitation and you're literally going, hey, I've made it to here and I'm okay with that, but there are all these other components that are underneath the umbrella involved with that success that you haven't figured out how to manage yet or delegate elsewhere to be able to manage them, then that mastery component of that career that you were ultimately maybe interested in is kind of gone out the window.
Yeah.
You're literally stuck there kind of treading water going, yeah, I'm stoked with where I'm at and I'm okay with that. And it's comfortable. And that comfortability, that comfort, that sense of comfort is kind of a constraint sometimes. And that,
Yeah.
that next elevated level that you're going to get to with that mastery piece is tough
Yeah.
because there's so many other pieces. Like that's what I'm trying to get people to wrap their heads around that are listening right now. It's literally, it's not that Steve is trying to go out there and build a jump, or anybody else out there that's been establishing a trail or building a terrain park that's listening right now. It's literally the other things that fold underneath that have evolved and allowed all these people to pursue other things that have been dropped in their lap.
Yeah.
I guess it's my point that I'm getting at, being able to navigate all those.
Yep. No, it's a good point. You know, I mean, it's one thing to master and master your, you know, your profession and, and do a great job. But there's a lot of people out there that are great at what they do, but sometimes they just don't fit. You know, they can't find a place where they fit, you know, because they're lacking kind of the other components, you know, behind the scenes. You know, going back to success, like some people are crushed by failure, you know what I mean? And we've all had our fair shares of failures, but, you know, I guess it's how you kind of react to that failure. You know, like I'm the type of person that, you know, I get super bummed out about, you know, if things don't go the way they should, but it also burns in my gut, you know, and I can't let it lie. And it helps me build up energy and like to do the next one, you know what I mean? Like, cause you know, sometimes you just have to, you know, pick yourself up and go, okay, you know, I'm going to do better the next time, because they don't always go perfectly. That's one thing I've learned, you know, when you're contracting, they don't always go the way you hoped. You know, you do your best, and sometimes you just can't get it, you know, like most of the time it works out, you know, but they don't always. But you know, and you got to be, you know, you can't be scared to take on new challenges too, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I've always been the type of person that's just like, I don't know, I've never done it before, but let's just see what happens, you know, fuck it, we'll give it a go and see where it goes, you know. And sometimes a lot of the good stuff can come out of that. So I guess I'm not a fan of that comfortable feeling in a weird way, you know what I mean? Like as soon as you feel comfortable and things are normal and it's easy and you got it dialed, it's almost like a sign that it's time to challenge yourself again, you know. You don't want to get too comfortable, I think.
Yep. And I'm kind of the same way. I think that challenge is necessary to be able to evolve who you are as a person, but that's only me. I want you to kind of let us in on Bromley and that experience there.
Yeah.
Because I think that is such a unique thing where you've got literally people, from my understanding, through my source, reaching out to you who are not necessarily a part of the resort. No disrespect to Bromley, but the end result was beautiful. Like it was really cool. And I think that's kind of understanding kind of like when to pull the trigger and when not to pull the trigger, and maybe having a bigger conversation. So maybe let us in on that story a little bit.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you know, the Bromley, it was, a really positive experience. You know, the senior management from Bromley, Michael, reached out to me like 4 years ago and just kind of cold called us. And, you know, he was like, yeah, you know, we have a lot of condo owners on the side of our hill, and they're complaining that they have to drive their kids over to other resorts and drop them off to use the terrain park, and then they come back here and ski for the day, and then they have to go back and get their kids. You know, like, you know, basically it's like what the hell's going on with the terrain park here? You know what I mean? And they made a commitment to like doing something about it. So to their credit, you know, they talked to us and we built them a bunch of rails. We went out and built the park for them. And like, I don't know, like just the combination of working with them and working with us, it just kind of turned that whole place around. And I would say like right from that first season, kind of put them, you know, back on the map. And it wasn't like we were building like a park for like, you know, rock star slopestyle riders. It was just like a park for everyone to enjoy, you know. And I think we nailed it. And so I went out the first time and built the original park there. And then in the middle of the winter, Lucas went back and brushed it up and, you know, fixed up all my mistakes and made it look really good. And yeah, they were stoked. I mean, the feedback has just been overwhelmingly positive, you know, like They had some concerns about, safety in the park before we arrived, and after we came in and, helped them build and design a park that worked well. Like they noticed a definite decrease in the amount of injuries and just complaints they had about the park and stuff like that. So it was, a great experience, I think, all the way around. And we love working with those guys. Like, it's just one of those resorts that, like, we roll in there and it's like they're instant friends with us. Like, we're just stoked to work with those guys, and they're stoked to have us there. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience.
And I think I've got to hit. So huge shout out to Bromley for being able to communicate, because I think that's a big part of being able to master having a career in this industry. And then for you to be able to step up with your company and go, yep, we're on board with making things safe, correct, because it's going to be not necessarily for the, like you said, the rock star slope style athlete, but the general public, the people who want their kids to go and ride something safe so that they feel okay, maybe going to ski elsewhere or skiing with them. Literally, safe terrain park is for the betterment of the industry. 100%.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that as a company, we really love, building parks for everyday park users. You know what I mean? Like, it goes back to like skiing and snowboarding. It's fun, and you should go out and have a great time, and it should be in a safe environment, with well built and a well maintained terrain park. And kudos to Bromley. They stepped up, and they did it, and they brought us in, and it was a very positive experience for sure. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation last winter, we weren't able to go out there this year, which is a bit of a bummer, but we keep in regular contact with those guys. I talk to Mike Scholes probably like every 2 weeks just to catch up and say what's up, and plan for the future. So, fingers crossed we'll be able to get back out there for next winter and work with those guys again.
That's rad. Was Mike Scholes who reached out to you originally?
I was Michael, who's basically the operations manager there. And then Mikey Scholes is like, I don't even know what he does there. He's just kind of like the everything guy, He's like giving ski lessons. He's working in the park. He's super rad dude. Like, he's like,
well, shout out to those two individuals for understanding that's what it's all about, man. Like,
oh yeah, hell yeah. Very, very, very cool people. And we really enjoyed working with them, and we can't wait to get back there and work with them again. So, like I said, fingers crossed we'll be there next year.
So rad. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's big to be able to communicate a need. If you have a need, don't be afraid to communicate it. Yep.
Well, especially with senior management teams, there's a lot of time they don't, I don't know, maybe they don't pay attention enough, what's going on. They look out the window and they see, oh yeah, we have a park, we have a park, it's there, there's people there, what else can we do? You know what I mean? Like, but it's for someone like Michael to realize that a change needs to be made, and he's getting feedback from, people who own condos on the side of the hill, and then he reacted to it, and he made a difference, and they have a great product there. Like, I think for that area, people are pretty blown away at what they did with their park that first year. So yeah, good on them. Good on them,
Bromley.
Good on you, Bromley.
Shout out to Bromley.
Yeah, exactly.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Peeling back another layer of maybe who you are and what you've been involved with. This is definitely a staple question on the show, and it gets dropped every show, but when people often describe themselves, they begin talking about their job. They do. Yeah. They kind of go, this is who I am. I work for so-and-so. I work for so-and-so. I did this. I did that. But I want to know maybe what's one thing that defines Steve Petrie that has nothing to do with equipment operations.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't really define myself by the job I do. Like I said, I'm not a huge self-promoter, and I think, a lot of people don't even know that I work for ASP, let alone founded it, and running the company. But, I've got a family. I got 2 kids, and I'm married, and, I think, I like to do stuff with my family. We like to ride bikes together. We're all snowboarders. We love going on surf beach vacations. I'm a passionate mountain biker. So like, if I'm not on the snow, that's pretty much what I'm doing, riding bikes, spring, summer, and fall. So that's something I'm really into. And in the last couple of years, I got back into snowmobiling and pow surfing, which I'm super passionate about. So I've been doing that a lot lately, sled access, pow surf trips. And, living in Pemberton, we're kind of like right in the center of the universe for that kind of stuff. So that's, I don't know if that's anything unique about me, but that's kind of what I do on my non-work time, biking, family, pow surfing.
Biking,
Stuff
family,
like that.
pow surfing. Can we talk about, okay,
Yeah.
let's
Surf trip. Other than that, not much.
No, I think, when you keep it simple, that's great. Can we talk about the pow surfing for a minute? Like,
Sure.
I feel like you're not really, just from when we've caught up and talking now, like you're not really somebody that follows the trends. And
no, yeah, probably
but
not.
no, yeah, like I feel like that's not you. But the pow surfing thing is, do you feel like, I feel like that it follows right in suit, like it's off the grid. You're maybe kind of niche brand loyal to maybe whatever board you're riding on for the pow surfing.
Totally.
But
Yep.
maybe elaborate on that. Like get us more maybe involved with what you're involved with there.
Yeah. So like, I think I tried a pow surfer like for the first time 5 years ago. Like I borrowed a buddy of mine's sled, went up to the Pemberton ice cap one day, tried pow surfing, and like the first turn I was like, this is sick. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where, on paper you're like, this can't work. How am I supposed to get down here on this, board with no bindings on it, but as soon as you make that first critical turn and you're into it, you're just like, you realize that it works, and it's a super addictive, activity. So, I mean, I've been in the snowboarding world for a long time, and I would say like I work so much in the winter, and I sort of felt like over the years I was losing contact with like my passion for snowboarding. I still snowboarded, but it was kind of like for work, or I'd go up the mountain every once in a while, but I wasn't stoked on it like I used to be. But pow surfing is kind of that new stoke for me. Like I love it. That's what I dream about doing. Like when winter comes, like I'm trying to get out on my sled and find zones to pow surf, like with all my pow surf friends. So and in turn, it's kind of like re-stoked me for snowboarding. And both my kids snowboard. My daughter, who's 9, she actually was a skier up until this winter, and then she decided like she was done with skiing and decided to snowboard, which I was stoked on. And so we spent like, before Christmas, we were up at the mountain like every day for like 2 weeks. Just, I wanted to get her to like a certain point because she was going into snowboard club this winter. And so it's all come full circle. I was a snowboarder, kind of lost the stoke for it, found pow surfing, then got re-stoked on snowboarding. And then my daughter's into it, my son's into it, my wife snowboards. So it's just this whole, circular snowboard stoke. So, I love it. But
yeah, I feel like that's the mastery of like the family dynamic right there.
Yeah.
Damn.
Try it anyways. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's just like living in Pemberton. I don't know if you've ever been to Pemberton before, or Whistler, but like we're in this valley just surrounded by unbelievable terrain that just has access points everywhere. Like it's nuts. Like you can just jump on your sled, drive up to the mountains, spend the whole day pow surfing, and be back home for dinner. You know what I mean? And have put like 300 or 400 kilometers on your snowmobile. Like it's so sick. And there's just zone after zone after zone around here. And it's unbelievable. And there was so many years when I was focused on building my business where I kind of just put that on hold, like I used to have a sled way back in the day, and I got out a bit, but then I sold it, started my business, started a family, and just kind of put it on the back burner. But now, just the way the business is developed and what we're doing, I find I have a little bit more time to actually enjoy winter, and a day out on the snowmobile, pow surfing is like the ultimate winter experience for me these days.
Okay, what's more difficult, navigating a snowmobile to the territory that you're going to ride, or riding the paddle surfer down the mountain?
Yeah, well, it could be the snowmobile component for sure, depending on where we're going, but yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about pow surfing, I'm definitely, going after steeper and steeper slopes, but it's generally mellower terrain. So it's kind of fun, it doesn't, you don't really need super gnarly steep terrain to really have a good time, but, when you have a bunch of dudes on sleds heading out, there's bound to be some incidents or breakdowns or something that'll keep it interesting, so.
Okay, Steve. So one of my favorite parts of the show is definitely the push road question of the day. And if you're in the push road, you've got a lot of time to think, and you probably get really good at using your mirrors because you're backing up a lot. But there's also a lot of time to think. And so it's fantastic that people are wanting to contribute, whether they're previous guests on the show or they're listeners to the podcast. The push road question of the day is an opportunity for everyone to contribute to this movement, as I want to call it, and be a part of the guest experience, as broad as it may be or as specific as it may be. But Steve, we're going to jump into it. I'm going to play the intro right now. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Push road question of the day.
Steve, Lucas Willett has your push road question of the day, and don't worry, it's not scary. Here we go.
All right.
Hello, fellow blade divers. Lucas Willett here, Arena Snowpark's most recent employee of the month. Steve, we've shared some pretty wild times together over the years. Everything from dealing with kids riding under our winch cables and launching off the knuckles of jumps that we're pushing up, to getting into yelling matches with Norwegian ski patrollers, not knowing what the hell they're talking about, to sharing a small bed together at Cutter's Camp for a week. But enough about my favorite times. This is your episode. You've worked on dozens and dozens of events over the years, and probably one of the most stressful events to work on is the Olympics. Even though everybody's stress levels are through the roof, you always keep it cool and calm and try to find humor in some of the worst situations. So I was wondering if you could give some examples of shit going sideways during your past 3 Olympics you've built, where you've kept it cool-ish, but could laugh about it all later. Everything from TV cables to smuggling in food to pretending to salt the half-pipe. Thanks, dude. Keep up the great work, Parker.
All right. It's good to hear from the Little Dipper. It's a true story. We did share a bed at Cutter's Camp.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah. I was the Big Dipper. He was the Little Dipper.
Oh man, amazing. Amazing.
Yeah,
The Little Dipper.
Yeah. We're not
every time that Lucas and I talk from now on, I've just got this vision.
Yeah, it was funny.
Oh my god, you tied that all together for me very well. That was sorry. All right, go ahead. That was incredible.
Yeah,
I can't stop laughing.
We're not just work friends anymore.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. I do try to keep it mellow. I'm a mellow guy by nature, I guess, but I do get excited about things from time to time. But yeah, the Olympics is like next level pressure for sure. I mean, Vancouver, we were contracted to build the half pipe there, and yeah, it was stress levels high. There was no snow. It was warm. We didn't have enough snow to build a half pipe with. So, the shit was really hitting the fan there. So yeah, lots of crazy times trying to get that thing to come together. We had to use hay to make the ends of the walls to extend the pipe out. We had to build the drop-in ramp out of scaffolding and hay bales just because we didn't have enough snow to actually build it. We used every stitch of snow we had just to build the half pipe. Like we were basically on an island snow with just mud surrounding us. It was crazy. We had our little island. We had to keep all our cats on there. We didn't even let people. We made people kind of wash their boots before they walked off the dirt to get on the snow, because it was just like, yeah, we had just enough snow to build a half pipe, like not a flake more. So it was all about, snow management at that point. Like it was, yeah, I don't think people really appreciate what we pulled off there. Like it was insane. Like, that pipe was pretty friggin' good for what we had to work with. So I'm super stoked on that. But, yeah, at the time, going back to the salt story, we were supposed to use fertilizer up at Cypress where the half pipe was, because it's in a provincial park, I guess. But anyways, we snuck some actual salt up there. And funny thing, we were trying to keep it on the down low because we want, the media and people to realize, catch on that we weren't using fertilizer, we're using actual salt. But we were desperate at that point to try to, make the pipe surface like firm. So it was kind of our last resort. And one of our shapers, it was cool. Our whole crew working on the Olympic half pipe had 16 guys working with us, 4 drivers and 12 shapers. They were all people that worked with us at the Camp of Champions for the previous few summers. So it was a super tight crew, really awesome guys to work with. But there's a picture, I think it's like, I don't know what newspaper it was, like in Canada, I think it was the Globe and Mail or something, of one of our diggers, Matt Forcier, like, shirt off at the Olympics, like a huge tattoos all over his back. And he's holding a bag of salt and just like firing salt into the wall and telling all the reporters, that he's got salt, you know what I mean? So it's just like the most hilarious picture. He's just like t-shirt off, tied around his head, covered in tattoos, like telling everybody he's smashing the wall with salt. So that was pretty funny, like crazy, man. And then,
you're like, yeah, we did that.
We did that. It's okay to say that now, because that's, however many years later, but
yeah.
I don't know. It was, that was such a crazy experience. And, like I said, a lot of stress, but we kept it mellow. And, we had some challenging times, but we had a really solid plan to build that pipe, and we managed the snow really well. And, shit sakes, we pulled it off, like it was stressful. And then once we realized we were actually going to do this and pull it off, it was incredible experience. And just the fact that it was in Canada and in Vancouver, kind of like our hometown, and just the whole spirit of the country was like going through the roof. So it was just a really special experience for us. So that was like the gold standard of Winter Olympic Games, as far as I'm concerned. I've been to a couple other ones since then that weren't quite at the same level, but still had some, we still had a good time. I was in Russia in 2014, kind of as part of the snowcross, skier cross build team. And that was a completely different experience. It was, the whole place just seemed to be falling apart. Like it was crazy. It was all brand new buildings and new venues and everything, but it was just, I don't know, built in a hurry or whatever, but it was just crumbling right before our eyes. So it was pretty, crazy to experience all that. But, the food was like almost unedible. The accommodation, we were like 25 people packed into a, condo that was falling apart. There's like packs of dogs roaming the venues. There was like garbage everywhere. It was just like a really weird experience, so. And we were living up at the venue, like right basically at the bottom, almost at the top of the slopestyle course in that sort of area. We had a condo on there, but we were kind of going down every day on the lift to go eat at McDonald's, because of all places, because the food that they were serving us up on the hill was just like disgusting. But we weren't allowed to bring food back up the gondola with us. So every day I'd go down to McDonald's, have my egg McMuffin and a coffee. I love coffee, so I usually drink, 10 or 12 a day. So I'd smuggle 2 coffees up with me inside my jacket every time I'd go back up the gondola. And they had the Russian army guys there, like searching us, and they never clued in that I had coffee in my pockets. So once I got past security, I'd just jump on the gondola and I'd have my last 2 cups of coffee of the day. So that was pretty funny.
I think I'm more interested in the 10 to 12 cups of coffee a
Yeah,
day.
well, you know.
Have you always been like 10 to 12 a
Nah,
day?
that's a joke. I mean, it's more like 4 to 6.
Damn.
That's a real number. Well, how
Yeah.
many coffees do you drink?
I'm usually at 2. I get beyond 2 and I'm just like,
Yeah, coffee's like a big part of my life for sure. Like I travel, no matter where I go in the world, I always have my coffee kit with me, you know, either like an
oh, cool.
AeroPress or a pour over, because you just never know. Right?
Are you a connoisseur? Are you a connoisseur of the coffee?
Yeah, medium connoisseur, you know. I definitely like good coffee, and yeah, I have an espresso machine and all that at home, but I just like, I like pour overs. I don't know if you make coffee that way or not, but that's a pretty basic way to make a coffee, but I think it's one of the best cup of coffee you can get. So yeah, when I travel around the world, I always bring that with me now. I've definitely been burned because, you wake up in the morning and the first thing I think of is like, okay, I got to get a coffee, right? And I've been like on a site inspection in China where I just like arrived in the middle of the night, woke up in the morning, rolled outside expecting to see like, a Starbucks or something, so at least I can get a coffee. And I'm just like, what the hell? There's like nobody, there's nowhere that you can get a coffee. And then I start going into a panic, I'm like, yeah. And then it's like, and that was the joke of that whole site inspection. Everywhere I went now, the host would make sure that there was a pot of coffee for me, like at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was hilarious. Nice. Everywhere I went, even if it was a restaurant for dinner, they'd come out with coffee for me. I'd be like, no, I'm good. I'll keep drinking beer.
Holy shit. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle, I guess.
That's priceless.
Yeah. Crazy.
No, it's definitely a lifestyle. Coffee connoisseur. No disrespect to anybody that's a coffee connoisseur, but I love coffee. I will say that the pour over, the instant coffee, not a fan of the drip coffee at all.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah. AeroPress is good. They're good.
Yeah, those are definitely good too. That's actually, I mean, we could go down the coffee wormhole, but
yeah.
I could go way further.
Same.
But like, I want to know more about like the accommodations, because I mean, you mentioned that and we hit that, and I thought Lucas's question was it was so on point, because I mean, how you've got all these different components of, wow, we have a snow constraint. Wow, we've got to put hay in just to establish what we don't have for snow in the wall. We've got to build scaffolding to make a ramp out of what we're going to have for a drop in, and we've got to make it work, and we're going to make it fly. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, you were literally like, hey, we're expected to do this. And at the end of the day, our guy got a photo in the paper and whatever.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And down the road, years later, it's even more okay. But yeah, like, that's huge, because I think I would have freaked out.
Yeah.
To be able to keep it cool and find the humor and all of that, that's a solid point.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's a lot of pressure, but I one thing I knew going into it, we had to have the right team, because the year previous to that, we had a test event, and it didn't really go that well. They didn't make any snow for us. We tried to make it out of natural snow, and the pipe wall kind of slumped, and it was just not like, the pipe worked, but it wasn't an amazing event, so that kind of put more pressure on me, and it made me, I don't know, I really did some thinking. I was like, okay, we need to have like the team, like especially when it comes to like things like the Olympics, like the show must go on no matter what. Like there's no delay in the schedule, no changes. Like if it's on at that time, that's when it's happening. You know what I mean? Unless something catastrophic happens. So there's a lot of pressure on you. So I learned the year previous, I'm like, okay, I got to put together like the best team I can get my hands on. You know what I mean? So I had like I said, all the diggers from Camp of Champions. Like I knew these guys well. They're all hard workers. They're down for the cause. Like they'll stay there day and night doing the job until it's done. And they work their asses off. I mean, we had form boards. They were shoveling snow by hand. They had like bucket brigades. We were like scooping snow in like big 40-gallon pails and bringing it out, like, 20 guys in a line, just handing the bucket out of the trees and dumping it onto the start ramp. Like it was insane, what all the crazy shit we did. And, but the team is crucial. When you have a good team, it's not just all riding on your shoulders. You have all this experience to fall back on, you know what I mean? So it's not just one guy making decisions. It's a team making decisions. And if we all succeed, if we all do a good job, we all succeed. You know what I mean? So that, I think the team's like a critical component. And, I definitely had my doubts in the early going, like when we showed up to start the build, it was looking super grim. Like there was not much snow. Like I think they made a little bit of snow like in like early October, November, and then they never had another snowmaking window again, and the event was in February. So we had to protect this little pile of snow at the top of the pipe that we had. It was nuts. So we pulled out all the stops, and yeah, I'm really happy with how it worked out. I mean, to be fair, first day of men's training probably didn't go so well. We put the pipe together, then we ended up having some rain, and the walls were not in the best condition. But I think by the second and third days of training, it started to come together. And by the finals, like it was a pretty good pipe. There was probably some things about it, that could have been better, but they were a little bit beyond our control. Like the wall shape was good, but we had a lot of sugar in the flat bottom, which I think was just a result of the weird weather we were having. It was dry, but it wasn't cold enough, to set the flat bottom up. And once the sun went down, salt or fertilizer, it doesn't do anything. So we ended up with a lot of sugar in the flat bottom, but we managed it the best we could. And even for the men's final, we had a volunteer crew of like 100 side slippers, and we didn't even let them go in the pipe all night and during training, we watched them slide through, and it was like breaking up the flat bottom of the pipe, and it felt like it was creating more and more sugar, but we were getting all the coaches yelling at us like, come on, send the slippers through, rah, rah, rah. And we had to like hold our ground and say, no, we're not doing it. So like all night they're just losing their minds because, that's just what they expect, right? It's a pipe event. You got to have side slipping, send the side slipper but we just, we held our ground. And I think to this day, I think it was the right call, like we just tried to minimize the amount of sugary snow we were introducing to the flat bottom. And yeah, and in the final analysis, I think it was a good event considering the conditions we were dealing with. It was pretty amazing. So yeah, I was happy with what the team did that day for sure.
But you also did Russia and you did Korea too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you talked a little bit about kind of your experience there with what it was like to live in Russia, experience some of the food and do all that. But I'd be stoked if you could elaborate on just kind of what it would look like to be a part of a team that was there on boots on the ground with Korea, Russia.
Yeah.
And just the operation that unfolded. Yeah, because it's all about the little things like where you're sleeping.
Yeah.
And if you can't shave, and shower, I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
No, it's true. I mean, and that's Russia in particular was just such a contrast to Vancouver, Vancouver was such a overwhelmingly positive experience for me in so many ways. Like we pulled off the impossible pipe build. It was in my hometown, and we were, Canada was winning gold medals, and just the whole vibe of the whole country was amazing. And then going to Russia was completely different. It was just, a different scene. Like I said, the accommodations, in Vancouver, 4 of us were staying in a multi-million-dollar house in West Vancouver and eating at Whole Foods every night. In Russia, we were packed into a condo with 25 other people sharing one bathroom. And I was eating at McDonald's every day because the food that they wanted us to eat was like horrible. You know what I mean? And I would normally not eat McDonald's at all, really, so eating it every day in Russia was a bit much, but I survived because the stress, kind of kept us thin. So we didn't have to worry about putting on any weight there. But, it was just a crazy place. When we first arrived, it just didn't feel real, and then we started talking to people that were working there, and they're like, oh, hey, the gondola that you guys are riding up in every day, it got hit with a rocket propelled grenade a couple years ago. And, the bus over there, somebody jumped on there with a machine gun and shot everybody on the bus, and we're like, holy shit, like, what are we doing here? Like it just seemed like a crazy place. Right. Like, and it even got to the point where like, there was like specific threats coming through on the news, like, the Black Widows were coming to bomb the village, so don't go down into the village on Thursday or whatever like that, and we're just like, what the hell? This is insane. And it got to the point, you know, and
So heavy.
it was, you know, it was just a weird experience. And we're just like, man, is it really worth it to do this, you know, build some shit out of snow, and we're running the risk of getting blown up. You know, maybe it was a little bit, you know, maybe the threat wasn't as great as it seemed, but the threat was there for sure, you know. And it got to the point where like all the builders, like from all the venues, we kind of ended up having this like kind of group meeting, and we made like, you know, a game plan for if the shit started hitting the fan and the bombs were going off, we were going to rally all the machine operators, get all the cats together, and drive up over the ridge and down to the other side of the valley just to try to escape from it, you know. Like, luckily it never happened, but it was like, that was kind of our thinking at the time, you know. This is like, you know, before like all the athletes and everybody showed up. But of course, then once, you know, the athletes and all the riffraff that goes along with the Olympics shows up, it starts to normalize again, you know. And it wasn't, you know, in the end, it wasn't so bad, you know, like all your friends from around the world, the athletes, the builders, you're all hanging out together. So there's definitely some good times there. But yeah, it was strange. It was definitely, you know, different from the Vancouver experience.
If you were gonna, I mean, I can't even imagine that's so heavy. I would have been on the phone being like, yep, don't know if I can make it.
Yeah.
If I do make it, then I'll see you when I see you.
It's crazy because like even right from the get-go, like I arrived at the airport and I was with Isabel, right? We flew in on the same flight, and we had a Russian guy driving us up to the resort, and he was driving like 150 kilometers an hour down the highway, passing cops, like not stopping for anything, didn't speak English at all. And we were just like bombing down the road, just going like, what the hell is going on here? You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like our first experience. It was strange. It was strange, but fun.
Heavy.
But fun. You know, in the end, it was fun.
Heavy. Yeah, fun doesn't come without a little bit of heaviness, I guess.
Yeah.
Roller coasters, double loop-de-loops. Yeah.
You got
people getting, yeah.
Just the rush from surviving it all, you know?
God. All the builders coming together you mentioned, like, is there anybody that you want to shout out or say thanks real quick? Just that was a part of that crew?
Totally. Like, you know, for the last 3 Olympics, I've worked with one guy, named David Nee, and he owns a company in Sweden called Scandinavian Shaper, and he's like the OG kind of like shaper guy. You know what I mean? All hand work. You know, he worked in the Arctic Challenge back in the days, building all the big half pipes, quarter pipes in Sweden and all over Scandinavia. But like, super good dude, good buddy of mine, and he was a real inspiration for me. Like when I started my company, so. When we built the pipe in Vancouver, I brought him out from Sweden to work with us because he's worth like 10 shapers, just one guy. Like, he's incredible machine at shaping and just so knowledgeable, you know. And he's, you know, going back to the, you know, leadership component, like he's the type of guy that just leads by example, you know. He's like, works hard, he knows how to rally the crew, and he knows how to get shit done. And a guy like that's super invaluable on any contract. So I worked with him in Vancouver, Korea, and Russia on all those Olympics. And looking forward to doing some more work with him in the future.
I think, Steve, like my question to you is, what's the difference between a leader and a manager, especially being somebody that has been a part of some pretty profound projects? And I feel like, you know, owner, operator, director. Are you the COO? I don't know.
Yeah. If you look at the organizational chart, you know, it's either my name or Lucas' name and then every block on there. But no, I guess technically the president.
There you go. But take it away.
Yeah, I mean, you know, leader, manager, there definitely can be a difference. You know, like I don't think I've ever really been a manager. Like, certainly as before arena snow parks, I was never the manager of anything, and I don't really consider myself a manager, so I hope I'm more of a leader than a manager. But I mean, with managers, I think, you know, there's sometimes there's not the same level of respect, you know, from the crew. You know, like there's people that get into management and maybe they haven't done the job of the people that they're managing, you know what I mean? But they're just there kind of like getting bogged down in the whole bureaucracy of being a manager and like focusing on different things, but they can't really relate to the people that they're managing, or maybe they have done that job. They've gone through through their career, and then they become manager, and they do get, they understand the job, but they become a manager and they get bogged down by all the other bullshit, and they just kind of become detached from the day-to-day reality of the people that they're managing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, so that's kind of one way to look at it. I mean, like a leader, I guess a leader is someone that it's just who they are. They it's a natural thing to them. They lead by example, and people see what they're doing and want to work with them and want to work for them and want to work hard and work with them and follow their ideas. You know what I mean? So I think there's just a different level of respect for someone who's a leader and knows their stuff and can just implore people to step up their game by just how they act and how they conduct themselves. Like going back to Crush, I think he's a perfect example of a leader. I mean, that guy, people want to work with them and they want to show them what they can do. And they'll travel all over the world just to get the chance to be around him and see what he's doing and emulate what he's doing. You know what I mean? And that's just a natural thing. That's just part of his personality. And my friend David Nee is the same way. Like he's just out there doing his thing, but there's just sort of this aura about them that they're just natural leaders, and people like them. People want to work hard for them, and they want to get the job done, and they're not scared to train people and show people how they want it done. You know what I mean? So I think that's the difference between managing and leading.
Yeah, and I can definitely advocate for Crush, because when I spoke to him on the phone just briefly this evening, it was just kind of a refresher. I was like, wow, he's getting to his point really quickly. And I appreciate that, because I have time and he has time. And yeah, shout out to Crush. And David, David, I've never met you, but shout out to you too.
Yeah, they're both cool dudes for sure. Like, great guys, and it's been my extreme pleasure to work with both of those guys over the years. And like I said, I can't wait to be able to travel and work with them again.
Steve, you've had I mean, man, the career has been long, and I'm sure, the inspirational list of people that have been a part of your career is just as long. But you've also been a part of some cool experiences like Super Park, Holy Bowly, Olympics. And I kind of want to delve into the Super Park realm with Super Park 6 and the Cutters Cup experience. And I have a guest question, and it is from Mr. Eric Rosenwald himself. And shout out to Eric for contributing. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
huge shout out. But Eric says he remembers watching your crew go to work in the zone right next to him, and that you were on and your crew was on an entirely different level of precision and aesthetic. And then that everyone was building at the time. It was super inspiring, he says. And his only memory that he claims from the first Cutter Camp was how far ahead you were and your team were in that aspect. He also claims and says that you were a part of starting the trend of the visiting team scoring the cover. So shout out to you. And that was a big deal back then, stealing the cover from the home field advantage as the visitor. But Eric's question ultimately is, what was it like being a part of the first Cutters Cup at Super Park?
Awesome. Yeah, that's so good to hear from Eric. That's like a blast from the past. That's amazing. It was an awesome experience, like, I mean, we had no idea what to expect. It was me, and at the time I was working with a good buddy of mine, Yan Ryu, who's now living in Aspen and running the show over there, but super cool dude, great park builder, great ideas. So it was him and I that headed down for that. And yeah, I mean, it was our first kind of like big league sort of like building experience, like all these other crews were there doing all kinds of great shit. And we were just like, whatever, we'll just kind of do what we do, and, Jan came up with the concept for this spine gap. So it was like a big spine that had a huge gap in the middle. Like I drove the cat right through the gap. So you had to like air over the gap and land on either side or end to end, typical spine stuff. But yeah, it went pretty well. We blasted through it. I think in those days, for whatever reason, I just had a technique for building hips, and I could get them done pretty quick. And I was into stepping stuff, and I was really into backblading with the cat, and it just, I don't know, it was just something I could do. I could build hips back then, which are not easy to build even to this day. Like building a good hip is definitely a challenge, not to mention trying to maintain it. But yeah, it went well. We built the jump, we did it with time to spare, and, things were cruising right along. So we were pretty hyped, and the jump looked good, but it was a pretty gnarly feature. Like definitely had to step up your game to hit the thing. But I remember, we were stoked. We thought we did a great job. We're like, oh yeah, man, we're going to win this thing. Look at this thing we built. Like, it's so awesome, and then the first day of camp the cup rolls around, and all the riders show up, and nobody even like looks at our feature. They're just like, whatever, like just kind of looked at it like, what the hell, and left, and at the time, the Mountain High crew were there, and they were it was the first time I'd ever seen a C box. Like those guys, Day, Franzen, and those guys built this C box like in the parking lot, like by hand with like a hand pump pipe bender and out of wood and 2x4s, and built the C box. So that was like the main attraction day one of the camp of Super Park. Like all the riders were just lined up to hit the C box. It was crazy. And it was such a new thing that no one had ever seen before. So kudos to those guys. But yeah, so nobody hit our jump, and we were just like, oh man, we fucked up. This sucks. And Jan and I were just like bummed, and we actually left the venue, and we're like, whatever, let's just go back and hang out at the hotel, So we didn't even think anybody was going to hit it. We just kind of wasted our time building this big spine. And then we just went back, chilled at the hotel. We were bummed. We're like, whatever, who cares? And then all of a sudden, we start to hear that like some of the riders are starting to eye it up, and, they're like, you guys got to come back here and just do a few little tweaks to the takeoff and stuff. So we rolled back up, and we made all the adjustments. And then all of a sudden, like once one person hit it, it was just like game on. It was sick. Like people were just going end to end on the thing. And yeah, it was pretty cool. And then, like you say, we got the cover shot of that feature. We didn't win. It was like a competition. So, there was a winner. I think Breckenridge won the actual, got voted the best park features, but we definitely won the cover contest, I guess. And it was sick. We had for the cover shoot, we had a snowcat, we had a pre-noth and a piston bully parked on either side of the spine, and the riders were airing the gap in between the two cats. So it was pretty sick. So yeah, we didn't win, but in the end, it was a pretty successful trip, I would say.
It's pretty awesome that you had a pre-noth and a piston bully parked on either side of the spine. Yeah. Pretty dope.
It was sick. Yeah. You wouldn't want to sketch the takeoff with those two cats on either side of it, but yeah, it was crazy. And when you went end to end on the thing, it was just like a knife landing. It was impressive to see these guys hitting it. It was super cool. But yeah.
No, I think that some of the most, I think fondest memories I have of looking back at some of the magazines that I still have copies of are those older photos.
Yeah.
And it's just so important. I think that, Eric's question, which shout out to Eric again, and just being able to realize that, yeah, man, the industry as a whole is a very cool component to be a part of, but I think you had something really cool to say there when you were receiving the feedback of going, oh man, people are stoked on the feature. Come back and make the tweaks. Like you were willing to do that. And then the yield result was a cover photo.
Yeah. It's like, okay, you two get out of the shame spiral. You got to come back here and get this jump going. So yeah.
So That,
It was
that,
sick, man. It was just a great experience. Like just, coming up from Canada, and all of a sudden we're, hanging out with all these other park builders, and like it was a pretty cool experience. Like it definitely opened my eyes to like, what was happening. It was kind of probably one of the first times
sure.
we were introduced to like other crews, and like just watching everybody work and seeing everybody's process. It was really cool. Like it was a cool concept for sure. Like we're stoked to be part of that first one for sure.
Well, I have one more guest question for you that's going to piggyback that one that I think you'll enjoy. And I will play it for you right now. Here we go.
Steve Petrie, this is Jeremy Cooper. This is not so much a question as I would like you to tell a story about your experiences at Super Park 6 and maybe get into detail about the mountain high feature. And if you could do so through interpretive dance, we'd all really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. What a funny guy, eh? What a funny guy. All right. I'll send them an interpretive dance video later.
That's fine by me.
Yeah. Okay. There's no video on this podcast. So
no, you'll
it.
send him the video and then we'll post it on social media. I'll make sure that Jeremy shares it first, and then we'll tag Jeremy in the Blade Dive podcast social media feed.
The pursuit of excellence in dancing. Yeah. Yeah.
I know you already touched on the C box a little bit, but I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, those guys, built that C box like a feature that no one had ever seen before. And now it's like a staple in terrain parks all over the place. You know what I mean? I think we built like 4 or 5 of them this year in our shop. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It just was amazing watching those guys just roll up into the parking lot, throw out all their materials, bend all the coping, put it all together, throw it on the snow. I was there while they were spray painting it silver, before they chucked it in the snow. And it was like, for lack of a better word, a bit of a game changer. It was fucking pretty cool. And it, like I said, and that was so many years ago. And then that's a feature that's still super relevant today in terrain parks. You know what I mean? So they definitely came up with something friggin' cool during that competition.
Yeah. And I think kind of tying into that leading component, one of the notes that I'm just referencing, and I think it's super cool, is the Canada Winter Games, and you being a part of that, and ASP being a part of that. I think it's a really cool event. I do, personally. I think it's a pretty profound impact on the industry. And if you could, like, I'd like for you to talk about that experience and how you've been involved, and
sure.
What that event is like.
Yeah, I mean it's such a great event. Like we've been involved with 4 Canada Winter Games so far, and it's just such a great experience. It's for younger kids. It definitely has its challenges. You're not always given a resort or a venue that's perfectly suited for a snowcross track or a slope style, but my philosophy with all these things has always been like, whatever you have, let's try to make it work. Cause I think it's important for you guys to host this event on the slope that you have. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a World Cup or an Olympic slope style event, but we can do something really cool with what you have. And that's always been our motivation, and a lot of the kids that travel from all around Canada to come and ride these stuff, they don't necessarily get to ride great parks where they come from, so they'll show up at these events, and this is probably some of the best, jumps or rail setups they've ever ridden, even though it's, maybe not on, like I say, a World Cup or an Olympic or level, but it's good, and the last Canada Winter Games was in Alberta and Red Deer, and that's a perfect example. Like it's just a tiny like resort. I don't even call it a resort. It's basically a river bank, like that you drive down from the top to the bottom and you park down there, and it's a steep slope that just flattens right out. So, we, designed a course that fit in that slope and what we had to work with, and it worked out amazingly, and it's a good chance for us to travel all over the country. We've been up to Whitehorse in the Yukon, Prince George in British Columbia, Halifax, Nova Scotia. So I was on the East Coast for a while. The last one was in Alberta, like I said, and the next one is back out east on Prince Edward Island, which will be really cool because it's, in quite a small slope that they're having it, but and they did have a plan. They're like, oh, maybe our resort's too small and we'll move it to one of the bigger resorts in Halifax, and I was all like, no, man, let's try to make it work here. This is something for this community, something you can be proud of, something that we can build before the games, like I'm all about the pre-legacy, let's build it now and let the local kids ride it for a couple of years before the games roll through, host the games, have the event, and then it'll still be around after when the games roll on. So, we want to leave these little resorts with something that's usable. We don't want to leave them with a big, unusable dirt work that only can hold 65, 70 foot booters. Like, we want to leave them with something that they can use as their everyday terrain park when we roll out of there. So not always easy, but we do our best to try to achieve that goal.
The big stuff is totally cool. It's great.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, when you're producing something that somebody can walk away with and experience, because that's what we're selling essentially in this industry. Yes, we're selling lift tickets, and we want to put butts on chairs, and we want to get them up the mountain, and we want to make sure they're fed, and we want to make sure they can shit and go to the bathroom, and that's great. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's all about an experience, and people always remember the experience. They always do. Yeah. They always do. And if they don't, the only things they remember are the food, and if they were able to go to the bathroom. That's it. I mean, literally.
Yeah. Totally.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge, and I really wanted you to talk about that. And I think the Canada Winter Games are cool.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
They're great. Yeah, we're stoked to be involved with the next one coming up here, and it's fun. It's really fun. Like, there's nothing better than building a course and hanging around for the first day of training when all the kids arrive and they get to test the course, and all of a sudden you hear them just freaking out about how great it is, and they're so stoked. It's like it's a really good feeling because you've made those kids' day. And it's an interesting design challenge because in the Canada Games, there's a wide range of ability levels, you know what I mean? So you have to try to build a course that can work for everyone. There's kids throwing triples on the jumps, and there's some people that are just doing straight airs, you know what I mean? But I think Canada Games is more about the experience, you know what I mean? Like showing up, being part of the games, hanging out with the other athletes, and just being part of that whole experience. So you have to design a course that will work for everybody, and that they can all have a good time on. So yeah, I love it. It's a good gig for sure.
Yeah, really cool gig. Yeah, I think it's a cool gig for sure. Gonna back that 100%. Delving into kind of the bad advice, maybe some advice that we wouldn't want to hear, but you maybe had that you want to let people in on, and just, hey, if you're going to let this in one ear and out the other, you got any of that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess this one simple bit of advice would be, don't go back for one more. We were talking about this the other day, you know what I mean? Like it's we're as machine operators and park builders, we're always programmed, to look at something and say, oh yeah, it looks pretty good, but if I'll just go back and get that ridge or catch that nugget that rolled out of my track, it'll be perfect. And that's the time when you're going to slide down the whole landing and just fuck the whole thing up. You know what I mean? And we've all been victims of it. And I've definitely had to learn that the hard way. But that would be an easy bit of advice. If you got it looking good, and the snow conditions are challenging, don't go back for another pass. Just leave it as it is, because you might be saving yourself a lot of work.
Yeah. Time is precious. Don't back up on that thing twice. Don't do it.
We've done it so many times. Like Lucas and I were working in Norway for I think it was the Arctic Challenge or the World Championships, one or the other, but at the Oslo Winter Park. And we were there, it was challenging conditions. It's cold there. The snow's dry. It's all man-made. When you overwork it, it just turns into baby powder. And anyways, it was the night before finals. We had the whole thing looking good. And and Lucas goes back for one more pass on the last jump because there was like a little bit of a ridge there. And I was like, okay, if you want, go for it. And sure enough, he slides down the landing, leaves two big kind of like bathtub skids down it, right? We're just like, oh, fuck, man. Why? Then, of course, I'm like, all right, I'm going to fire up the winch cat and I'll go fix that, and I hadn't run there. They had this Light Wolf winch there. I don't know if you've ever seen those things. They're like spaceships. So like, it's the craziest winch cat I've ever been in.
I got in a Light Wolf this year. It was pretty badass because I felt like I was in a TIE fighter. I literally did. Like a Star Wars TIE fighter. I was like, fuck yeah, what am I going to go build right now? What the fuck am I going to go? I was just like all motivated. I was super pumped. Yeah. Anyway, side note, your story. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's the middle of the night. I got no one to call, no one to show me what to do. And, I'm like looking around this cat and I cannot figure out what anything does. Like I can't even get the blade to move or anything. So I'm flipping through everything, looking for the manual, rah. And then all of a sudden I flip down the visor, and on the back of the visor has all.
Oh, no way.
It's all written right there. Like what every button, every function in the whole cat does. So I was like, oh my God, you saved my ass. You know what I mean? So I managed to get that thing rolling, and we went up and groomed at the landing, got it all fixed up. But, and it's the same thing in hindsight, because it was in the middle of the night and all the resort lights were shining on the landing. And like, it probably looked, way worse than it actually was, you know what I mean? Because the shadows definitely can make that shit look gnarlier, But,
it totally can.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know kind of if you've ever run into an ego and how you've dealt with that ego, and if there were any learning experiences along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this. Like, I don't recall running into any like crazy egos that that I couldn't work with. Like I kind of said before, like I try to surround myself with like-minded people. So I mean, we've definitely run into situations, when you roll into a resort or for a park build or an event. Some of the local drivers can get a little bit bent out of shape, you know what I mean? And that's sort of, you can run into issues there, but we always make sure we don't go in there like with our own sort of ego and attitude and say, well, this is how we're doing it, and you guys just get out of the way. Like we're kind of like, you know what, we're here to work with you guys. We're not trying to kick you out of your park. We're not trying to steal your cats. Like we've just been brought in to do a job, and we want to work with you guys. And, we're all going to look good if we do this right at the end of it, So I think that's kind of, in terms of ego, where I've had a little bit more challenging times, and I've traveled all over the world and arrived, in China or Japan or Korea in the middle of the night and had to deal with, machine operators that we don't speak the same language, and they're put out that, they have to give their cat up to me to go do some work. So, you learn how to, even if you can't speak the same language, you try to still, speak the lingo, let them know that you know what you're talking about, about the machines, you're not going to beat the shit out of it. You respect what they're doing, you respect, cats and building and sort of try to convey that, I don't know how to say it, like convey that message that, you're just here to help. You're not here to try to put anybody out, and it's a bit of a game, but, I think over the years we've gotten pretty good at it, I think there's very few places that we roll into that, even if they, the locals are not stoked for us to be there when we leave, they're a lot happier with us when we leave, So, yeah, as far as egos, I think that's pretty much all that I've run into. I think it's more of just, managing it, you know what I mean? Like, I think over the years I've gotten, maybe okay at dealing with those egos and trying to flip it on them, and like I said before, I mean, I've gone to so many resorts where you could tell that, the local crew or the local operators are just like pissed that we were there or I was there. But by the end of, being there for 2 weeks, we're hanging out, drinking beers and going to restaurants, and we're like best pals, you know what I mean? So, so, I think if you can prove that you're the real deal, and you're not just like some, bullshitter that doesn't have the skills to do the job, once they see you get in the machine and do what you can do, I think that a lot of times they're like, okay. I mean, this guy, I guess he does know what he's doing. You know what I mean? And I'm the opposite. I don't really have an ego. Like I'm probably the complete opposite. Like half the time I feel that I suck at most things, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to do my best to struggle through all this stuff, you know, but that's probably just the way my personality is, and keeps me, you know, driving to try to get better at stuff, you know, and diversify.
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's definitely a tough question
Yeah.
for sure. It's a touchy subject for sure, because egos can be good to kind of boost the morale of other people that maybe need a little kick in the ass. So
Yeah, exactly.
But I do have to ask, kind of based on your intel and what you've been around, what you may think the future looks like for the snow industry.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to think about, you know, like it's hard to say. I mean, in a way, I kind of feel like our industry is starting to kind of split a little bit, you know, like in two directions. On one hand, you have like the high performance stuff, you know, the Olympics, the X Games, all that high level shit, and big parks, big jumps, like insane tricks. Like people are pushing the limits to what's possible on a snowboard, which is cool to see. You know, it's more of a spectacle. You're like, wow, that's insane. But I feel like for me personally, and I think a lot of people, they don't look at that and it doesn't make them stoked to go snowboarding or stoked to go skiing. It's just something that they'll never be able to achieve, you know what I mean? And like to get to that level, like you're gonna have to pay some serious dues to get there, you know, and there's people that can do it, you know, but I think for a lot of people, that's not where they're trying to head in their ski and snowboarding, you know? So I kind of worry a little bit, you know, like they're starting to turn into specialty events, like, you know, 22-foot half pipe and Olympic slope style, like they're sort of getting standardized, you know, and they're just beyond the regular human. So I worry a little bit like down the road that they're just going to be the future sort of abandoned sites, you know, like the freestyle aerials or stuff like that, you know, ski jumping, like just they're only used for the Olympics, you know, but in the rest of the year they just sit there unused unless somebody comes and trains on it, you know. So and then there's the other path where people are trying to like just go out and have a good time and snowboard and ski and putz around and do some fun stuff, you know. And I think, you know, events like the Holy Bowly and like different bank slaloms and, you know, different kind of creative, unique events, those are the type of things that I like. And I think that really gets people hyped to snowboard and participate in these sports, you know. So that's kind of what I like. That's where I'd hope the industry goes a little bit more, you know, towards the fun stuff and stuff that people can learn on and progress, but still have like a good time, you know. So, you know, we'll see where that all ends up. But I think I do like the trends of the bowly style features and the bank slaloms. Like I know people are like, oh yeah, well, Holy Bowly stuff, it's so hard to maintain in a park and rah. But I mean, you don't have to have the Holy Bowly in your park every day. You know, there's elements from that style of building that you can incorporate into your park. And it's, you know, one or two features. It's not impossible to maintain. You know, sure, the cats, you know, you can do your best with the cat and the hand crew cleans it up. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's that hard to deal with, you know. One thing I'd love to see in the future is more mini pipes coming back to the resorts, you know. Like I think there's like this underground desire to ride half pipe, you know, but the big pipes are just too big for most people, you know. I think like a nice 13-foot pipe, I think that would just be something that could make a real comeback right now. And I think people are kind of looking for that experience. So that's something I can hope for the future.
I think those are all solid points.
Yeah.
I would love to see more mini pipes.
Yeah, I
really would.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think people don't realize how fun it is to ride half pipes because they just haven't had an experience to ride the right size pipe. You know, they got stuck in the 22-footer or even the 18-footer, but you get a chance to ride a 13 or whatever. Like it's fun. Like it's super fun. And I think a lot of people would get back into pipe riding or learn, you know, pipe ride for the first time if there was more of that stuff around. So yeah.
It's almost as if I feel like, and we've talked about this before on the show, the future is definitely being able to realize who the future is and what they will want to participate in.
Yeah.
And right now, like as you just mentioned and have mentioned in the episode, it's not the big jumps. It's not the photo shoot features. It is definitely the smaller components of the terrain park that they'd be interested in. If nothing else, just a basic beginner run with an opportunity to go and ski it.
Yeah, no, totally. And I mean, going back to your point on access, I mean, not everybody can make it up to a ski hill. You know what I mean? Like that, it just may not happen to people. And that's just kind of where we lose people right there. I think an interesting model to think about, and we've worked with a few municipalities. We this winter, there's a small municipality not too far from where I live in British Columbia called Williams Lake. And they're just looking for stuff for kids to do. COVID hit, people aren't inside as much. They're outside playing. So they ordered a bunch of like a really quite a good rail package and box package off us. And they were just setting them up in a park in their community for the kids to use, and that concept I thought was really cool. And we've worked with municipalities before, and I think it's something that we really want to kind of move forward with a little bit more as well, because the municipal gym park is like the perfect thing to introduce people to skiing and snowboarding in parks, because it's something that's free to use. It'd be just like a skate park or any other municipal facility. So they buy the features, they set them up, and the local kids could get a chance to learn how to ride all these features without having to go up to the resort and buy a lift ticket and get a drive up there and all the stuff that goes along with it. So I think, in the municipalities, around North America that have snow, I think this is something that could be a trend, like setting up a municipal rail park or a snowboard park maintained by the municipality. It'd be great for the community.
I'm down for that. I'd be there. I'd be there 100%. I'd be the old fart doing front boards on the,
totally
2 meter, 3 meter down bar.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe 10, 15 centimeters wide. Maybe that's about as small as I would go.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'd be down with that. 100%.
Yeah. And there's a demand for that kind of stuff. Cause I mean, another trend we've kind of noticed in the last few years, and definitely, over this winter with, COVID and stuff like that, is the demand for features for people's backyards, and tools, like to buy them, like we get all these kids buying rakes off us just so they can shape a kicker in their backyard, or they want like an 8-foot box, or, we even have some customers that are going full pull and buying like resort grade features to set up in their backyard, in Colorado, because they have a piece of land that works for it, so it's yeah. I mean, there's just this kind of army of backyard shapers out there in the world, and then it's happening. I've seen some pretty cool setups, people with rope tows in their yard, and like, pretty legit setups that they ride every day. So I think, if you look at what happened through COVID with resorts, being open, closing, people want to snowboard, and people have kids that they want their kids to ski and snowboard, and they're willing to invest the money in this so they can have this stuff at home for their kids to train on. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I think it's awesome. And I think your outlook on the future is pretty rad too. So thanks for sharing that. I do want to give you, is there anybody that you want to thank? I would love for you to give shout outs to anybody that you would want to thank at all. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I've been in this business for a long time, and I've traveled all around the world, and I've met so many people. So it's hard to name everybody, but I would just say shout out to all the people that I've worked with over the years on the events and resorts we worked with. Like it's been a pleasure working with everyone, and hopefully if things return back to normal, we'll be able to travel again and keep seeing those people and making new friends along the way. But yeah, I'd also like to, shout out to my wife, Shannon, who puts up with my nonsense, running a business, a terrain park business, and doing what I do. She's been a huge supporter of mine, so I really appreciate that. And say what's up to my kids, my son Gray and my daughter Rowan. Those guys are inspirations for me, and I love snowboarding with them and hanging out and riding bikes. So I want to continue to do that. Thanks to Jeremy Cooper. I'm going to get that dance video together for him tonight, and I'll send it off for him. And thanks for hooking me up with you and the podcast. I really appreciate that. So, yeah. And, finally the Little Dipper. I want to say thanks to the Little Dipper, and I'll see him in the shop next week. I guess we'll hang out.
Oh man, I'm gonna message the Little Dipper tomorrow, and I'm just gonna say that. I'm just gonna say, hey, Little Dipper, how you doing today?
He loves it. He loves it. You can't get enough of it. He is the Little Dipper.
That's so good.
Yeah, no, he's a good dude.
Well, Steve, I just want to take a minute or two to say thank you for taking time out of your day to catch up on the podcast. I know that people have lives and people have schedules, and there's a lot of coordination and logistics that have to happen, not just on my end, but your end. And so thank you for taking the time out of your day to just chat with us. Tell us your story and what's been going on in your life, man. Really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. I really appreciate you, including me in your podcast, and it's been great. I'm stoked. Thanks so much.
Huge thank you to Steve Petrie. You, sir, are definitely the OG of terrain parks in Canada, and it was an honor catching up with you. I loved hearing the old stories about Super Park, and especially Steve's involvement with municipalities to kind of give the parks to the people a little bit, with the cities getting involved with how they can establish parks in town. Like, that's dope. I love that thought. Love that idea. Okay, you know the deal. Don't be a dick. Please fill your machine with diesel at the end of your shift.